On August 16th of 2021, I woke up at Coffeewood Correctional Center with 10 years left on my sentence. So I got up and made a cup of coffee, I did some reading, I called my girlfriend, I went to work, I did some burpees, like I just had a normal day in prison. And then they called me in the counselor's office at 2 o'clock. And some lady over the speakerphone said, "Hey, Mr. Cross, are you sitting down?" And my first reaction was fear, like my chest clenched up, and because that's how they tell people that someone has died. Like your mom died, your grandma died, your dad died. And so I'm thinking, and she immediately launches into, because you're leaving Coffeewood today, you've been granted a pardon. And I kind of like hit a knee and like started tearing up, and I was like, but then I was like, oh, well, what if like it's a mistake, or like what if they change their mind, or like what if whatever. So I'm like numb to the feeling, but all these thoughts are just racing through my mind. I'm like half losing my mind. So I walk back in the dorm, and the only thing I know I need to do is get a shower because I just finished doing burpees, and Courtney and I have never met in person. So she was a reporter for a local TV station. She interviewed me for a story in 2019, but she only interviewed me by phone, so we've never actually seen each other. Then when she left TV, we stayed in contact and we're friendly, and at the beginning of that year, we just started talking more and we just clicked. Like, we knew we had a connection, we knew there was something there, so we wanted to figure it out. So we said, okay, well, like, let's explore this as a relationship. And I did not want her first thought of me in 3D to be, God, he smells terrible. So I ran and I got in the shower, and then I called this kid over to my bunk. I was like, look, man, I know you don't have anything. I know you don't have any family, so I'm gonna give you all my stuff. If something happens when I come back, I need it back, but otherwise it's you. Like the food, the hygiene, the shoes, like I got you. So he's like all emotional because like I don't think anybody's ever given him anything in his life. So I'm making sure he's gonna be all right. Then I'm going out and I gotta sign paperwork, and here in front of me is pardon paperwork with the governor's name and signature and a place for me to sign. I'm like, yo, this is real. Like they're actually letting me out of here. And then they say, oh, well, we got another piece for you to sign, but we can't find it. And I'm like, oh, please find it. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, don't have me sign paperwork and then be like, oh, we changed our minds. Like, you can't have it. So then I'm freaking out, and I'm going from here to property to medical, back up here to sign more, and not knowing what to expect because it was like, this can't be real, but also this apparently is real. So after an hour and a half, I walk into the front of the prison. And it was amazing because at the last prison, they processed you out through the back gate, through the Sally Port. But this one, like, I literally walk into the front of the prison, like where the visitors come in, this nice, like, open space. It was not what I expected. And there's my mom. I haven't seen my mom in a year and a half because of COVID. There were no visits. There was, like, no way to see anybody. So, like, I'm here and she's there, and I'm like, I want to go give her a hug, but they're like, no, you got to fill out your paperwork. So I'm like 10 minutes filling out paperwork and getting stuff and doing whatever, and I'm like looking over my shoulder. Finally, I get my paperwork, I walk over there and I give my mom a hug and I pick her up, and she says into my ear, she says, let's get the F out of here. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Like, let's not let them change our minds. So we make it out the front door, and then I walk, and I'm sitting in a car. Like, an hour and a half or an hour and 35 minutes before that, I was just a dude in prison with 10 years left, and now I'm like sitting in a car with my mom and looking over and like staring all around. But we have to figure out about Courtney. So I said, well, what about Courtney? And she said, oh, she's on her way. So I take my mom's phone and I call Courtney, and she's like crazy. She's like, I'm coming. I could just hear the stress in her voice and like high speed, hightailing it down the highway. And we're like, well, where do we meet her? And we had always joked that we would always meet in a cornfield because like of some horrible thing of being in the middle of nowhere. So we were gonna have some romantic interlude in a cornfield with Nutria as witnesses. So sure enough, right next to the prison is a driveway to a farm that leads to a cornfield. So we pull over right there and we're like looking at the corn, but I'm with my mom and I'm like, we don't know what to say. Like, it's too real. It's too big. There's no way to explain it. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I see this car pull up in the rearview mirror, and there's Courtney. So we've never seen each other in person, and I've seen her on TV, and she's seen pictures of me, and we had these like really bad video visits, this like 1970s technology. But other than that, we had reverse catfished each other because we knew the potential to be disappointed. So rather than be like, yes, I'm tall and handsome and this, I was like, man, I got a bad tooth, like I walk funny, I got weird nipples, like. I told her just the normal and the worst things about me so that when she saw me, she would hopefully be happy. And when I saw her, I was blown away. Like, she had sold this terrible version of herself, and she was gorgeous, and she was there, and like, just blew my mind. And then we did the meanest thing that I've ever done to my mother, who has been waiting 19 years for me to get out of prison. We were like, hey, mom, I love you, but like, Courtney and I got to go do something. Like, we'll be back. So my mom said, oh, I understand, but I don't know if she understood. Like, I think that kind of broke her heart. But so we went off and we managed to find some time and some privacy to ourselves, which let me tell you was an absolutely amazing experience. I would highly recommend it for anybody to build an incredibly satisfying emotional relationship and then take it to the physical level, because it's like supernova. So then we realized, like, I need some stuff. Courtney needed to go back home. So we meet my mom at Costco because, you know, I need a phone, I need clothes, I need food, I need hygiene, I need everything. And that's where it got to me. Like, I was like, okay, I need boxers and socks. Like, I can start small. And then, like, I need jeans or maybe shorts or t-shirts, and I need a toothbrush and dental floss and toothpaste and deodorant. And, like, that's the only thing I could think of because that was all we had in prison. Like, there was no more. And then I was like, wait, I need tools. Like, I need a job. Like, I need transportation. And it just started building one thing after the other and the choices and them asking me things. And I just, like, I wanted to put my head in my hands because I was losing it. And I was like, I need to go. Like, I need to get out of here. So my mom went, she got us some steaks, and she was like, all right, so we checked out. Like, we didn't even explore half of Costco. We made it like an eighth of the way in, and that was it. I couldn't take any more. So then we're going home, and I'm like looking out the window. My mom lives in this beautiful area, and I'm just rolling by nature. I hadn't seen a tree up close in 19 years. Like, I'm just blown away by trees and mountains and wildlife and people. Like, literally just people. Like, seeing people on the side of the street felt bizarre to me. I don't know how to describe it. So then we're about halfway home. My mom's like, oh, it's too bad. We're getting too late. We're not going to be able to have those steaks. And I was like, what? Like, I've been waiting for a steak for almost 20 years. Like, what do you mean we're not? She's like, oh, yeah, it's too late. We'll just have them tomorrow. Like, inside, I'm like, are you serious? Like, I love you, Mom, and I just got out of prison, and I need to be grateful, but is this a joke? In a weird way, she was really right. So we get home. I'm still kind of seething about the steak, but she's like, hey, I got some good stew. Why don't you have it? So I haven't eaten anything, right? So I try to take one bite, and I just feel like I'm gonna vomit, and I realize I've got all this tension all throughout my body. I'm like adrenalized, like I'm ready to go to war, because I'm basically in shock. I was just told, I'm not spending 10 more years in prison, I'm coming home, and that didn't wear off anytime soon. So we're at home, and they have a little like light dinner, and I just can't eat. I think I had like a glass of milk or something. And then we're sitting there, and like we're talking, but again, we don't know what to say. It's like almost overwhelming. And then Courtney and I go downstairs, and my mom goes upstairs, and everybody goes to bed. But the problem is, I couldn't go to sleep. So Courtney and I had talked about whether we would be able to sleep together because I hadn't had anybody touch me in my sleep for 19 years. Like, you don't touch somebody while they're sleeping in prison. And I was worried, like, she would touch me and I would lash out or I would freak out or I would whatever. And she was worried because she had been, like, dating, but since she got divorced, basically about the same time I went to prison, she hadn't been in a long-term relationship. So she hadn't been, like, sleeping with anybody. So it was one of those things, like, how are we going to share the bed? Like, how is this going to work? And she immediately fell asleep. Like 10 minutes in, it's just like snoring and spread out, eagle on the bed. And I was like, well, on the one hand, I'm really happy that like you're comfortable enough to just sleep with me and this is good. On the other hand, like you can't stay awake with me for an hour, like really. But I laid there and I remember just having like this smile on my face, but also having like the beginning of this stress because it was like, there's still this shock that just feels so big. And I reached over and I grabbed her hand or I grabbed her arm or something, and it just calmed me down. It was like, she's real and she's here, and whatever this is, we can get through it together. Because I didn't know anything else, but I was like, I know that. I can start there. Finally, after about an hour of trying to sleep, I just gave up and I got upstairs and I wandered through the house. My mom has this little porch on the back of her house, and I walk out there and I was like, turn the light off. And I was like, dude, like, I'm alone. I'd been in a dormitory before this, like with 82 people, all, surrounded by people all the time, always noise, no privacy to use the bathroom. Like, I was alone on a porch, and I could see like the moonlight, and I could hear the crickets, and it was amazing. I just sat and like marinated in that for, I don't know, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then I realized like, wow, I'm really hungry, but like, I don't want to go cook a steak. Like, I don't know. And then I was like, I think they said they had ice cream. So I go inside and I open the door and I look in the fridge, and it's this thing of Magnum ice cream. I'm like, oh my God, I've seen that on TV. It's amazing. So I pull it out and I get a spoon and I'm like trying to dig in and I'm like, man, it's like something's wrong. I'm like, oh, they must have like a bad freezer. It must be too cold. So I take it and I stick it in the microwave for like 15 seconds. Pull it out. I'm like, dang, I still can't get into this thing. Like, what's going on? So I stick it in there for like a minute. Finally, I go and it's like starting to melt, and I realize there's like a hard shell you have to crack. But instead, all I did was like melt all the ice cream on the inside. So it's almost like a milkshake. So I'm like taking chunks of half melted fudge and like the stuff. It was the most amazing thing ever. So I'm sitting out on the porch, like eating a pint of half melted ice cream, just smile on my face, like finally relaxing, finally feeling like comfortable and alone and real and in the world. And then I spent the night kind of thinking and feeling and experiencing. Like there were a lot of tears, there was a lot of joy. It was a powerful thing. And there were also like plans, like, all right, like I don't want to be overwhelmed. Let me start small. Like, what are some things I can do? What do I need to look at? Like, what am I going to do about work? What am I going to do about school? Because I thought I was going to go straight to grad school. So I started like kind of working on these lists, and I had the phone, so I was like tapping out little things and making notes to myself. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, so I'm like looking on social media, and I think I have a post from the middle of that night where I like took a picture in the dark or took a picture with just the light on, and was like, dude, like I'm free. Like I'm actually out of prison. And it completely blew my mind. And I remember I went back inside, and I don't think I watched TV yet because I didn't watch TV for weeks. But I went back inside and then I came back out and I like watched the world come to life. Like while they were finally getting up at like 5 or 6 in the morning, I'm just sitting back on the porch and just watching like the light come in and people, and then I hear somebody walk into the kitchen and I talk to my mom and I talk to Courtney and we make coffee. And it's just this absolutely amazing experience of like waking up as a free man, not waking up, getting up in the morning, like getting out of my still awake space as a free man and never like having understood what that experience meant. It's like those things that I dream of, but I didn't think would ever be real. It was like, oh, well, one day maybe, but it's like a fantasy. Like you don't actually think you're gonna meet Jennifer Lopez or get out of prison. It's too impossible to consider. So it was probably the most amazing and intense and powerful day of my life. And I didn't sleep at all for 3 days. Like I just couldn't. Now, most people who have notice ahead of time, they basically get their anxiety out of the way first. They don't sleep for 2 or 3 days before they get out, and then they get out and they crash. I didn't know, so I got my anxiety and my not sleeping basically when I got out. And then for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I didn't sleep more than 2 or 3 hours a night. Like I would go to bed at like 12, wake up at 3, finally give up and just start doing stuff. So it was just too much. Like I just couldn't process. I was so excited. I was so stressed. I was so worried. I was so happy. It was so many different emotions. And it took a long time to get used to that. But when I look back on that day, I'm reminded just how quickly things can change. Literally in an instant, I go from having 10 years left to getting ready to walk out of the gate. And those were times where I was feeling hopeless. Like going to that dormitory, I felt more hopeless and more frustrated than I had over all those years in prison because I'm surrounded by people and it's obnoxious, it's loud and they're drunk and they're fighting. And it's just like, it's not a place I feel comfortable. It's not a place I can bid. Like I can't do this. And I remember, one of the mentors in my life was like, yeah, that was the first time I heard a crack in you. Like I was really worried about you. Like, are you going to make it? Because man, I'm that and people try you. And it's one of those situations. It's horrible. And it's like, I'm doing everything I can to stay out of trouble, and I have everything being thrown at me, and I managed to. I managed to, through grace, through friendship, through whatever you want to call it, through people like believing in me, for me, kind of holding on, I managed to get through it without losing it, without like doing anything really stupid. And the reward, like the reality was that was the reward. Like I had been tested, whatever way, like I'm not cosmically or religiously, but I had passed. Like I had passed that test. I'd been sentenced to twice the high point of the guidelines, and I wanted to give up hope, and a number of times I did give up hope, but I kept going, and I got a college degree, and I studied, and I learned, and I helped other people, and I figured a way to better myself and others, and there was this reward that, hey, you can put in for clemency, you can try for this, and it felt, far-fetched and unrealistic. And then I'm sent to this dormitory. It's like this next test of like, can you keep your cool in the worst of circumstances? Can you like be okay? Can you deal with difficult things? Can you make good decisions? Can you deal with distress? Can you deal with emotions? And I did. I managed to pass. And then I get out and I don't realize that's the biggest test of all. Because the amount of stress and the amount of excitement and the amount of distraction and all the things pulling in every direction, even on that first day, is beyond description. And unless you're getting out of that, or unless you're one of those people getting out of a totally immersed experience or environment out into the world, it's just impossible to describe. But that day will forever be with me. And I'm looking forward to celebrating the year coming up this month.